I'm writing this from a psychiatric hospital, not because I'm crazy, but because I took 2 photos no one believes are real. My own children brought me here 3 months ago. They think I edited the pictures on a computer. Truth is, I can barely check my email. I'm 70. I've lived in the same house for 40 years, a small place at the edge of the woods, the nearest neighbor half a mile away. My husband died 5 years ago. When the grief settled, I realized I loved the solitude. Just me, my garden, deer at dusk, and the endless trees beyond the backyard. My 2 children moved to Canada for work years ago. They call once a week and visit maybe twice a year. I had my routines, my peace, my sense of safety. Then September came, and everything changed at first in little ways. Every morning the trash can was knocked over. I figured it was a bear or raccoons. We see them here, especially late summer when they're fattening up for winter. I picked up the mess, secured the lid, and carried on. Then my bird feeders started coming down. I keep 3 of them on hooks, about 6 feet high on the porch posts. One morning in early September, all 3 were torn off. Not just dropped, the metal hooks were ripped out of solid wood, like something had grabbed them and yanked with impossible force. The feeders were crushed and seeds scattered everywhere. I stood there in my pajamas, staring at the wreckage. A bear could knock down a feeder, sure, but ripping industrial hooks out of solid wood is another matter entirely. The next morning I found the tracks. I was watering the tomatoes when I saw them in the soft mud by the garden fence. At first, I thought they were human, 5 clear toes, the general shape of a foot, but they were huge. Nearly twice the length of mine and pressed so deep the mud had compacted into hard ridges around each print. Whatever made them was heavy, very heavy. I crouched down, my knees shaking, and spread my fingers over one print. My whole hand, fingers splayed, didn't even cover half of it. A cold feeling rose in my stomach. I looked toward the trees about 100 feet away. The woods were still no birds, no rustling leaves, just silence. I went inside and locked the door. That's when the smell started. It's hard to describe. Think wet dog, but worse. Stronger, moldier, with a sun-baked rot underneath. And beneath all of it, a raw, unwashed stink, like something that had never once been bathed. The odor would drift in, usually at night when I was reading in bed or watching TV. Then, suddenly, it would saturate the house so strong, it stung my eyes. I began locking every window and door, even during the day. September heat was brutal, and my little house doesn't have air conditioning, but I couldn't stand that smell or whatever was bringing it seeping inside. Worst was waking at 2 or 3 in the morning to that stink filling the bedroom. I lay there in the dark, heart pounding, too scared to move. The smell meant whatever it was close, very close. Sometimes I heard things outside, heavy steps on the gravel path or a low, breathy sound unlike any animal I know. I pulled the covers to my chin like a child and waited for dawn. It happened on a Tuesday night in mid-October. I remember because Tuesday is when my daughter usually calls, but she'd texted earlier to say she had work and would call Wednesday. So I was alone, more alert than usual. I went to bed around 10 but couldn't sleep. The house felt wrong, too quiet, and somehow too loud, every floorboard creak magnified. Around midnight, I heard something outside the bedroom window, a rustle in the bushes, then a heavy body scraping against the siding. My bedroom is on the first floor, looking out over the backyard and the distant tree line. I'd slept in that room for decades and never once felt afraid. But that night, lying in the dark, I was terrified. The rustling continued. Then I heard it, a sound I can only describe as breathing, as if something stood right outside the glass, pressing its nose to the window, inhaling my scent, long, slow breaths. The stench hit me so strong I almost vomited. The same rank, unwashed reek, now overwhelming. I couldn't just lie there. I had to know what was making that sound. Moving as quietly as I could, I slipped out of bed and crept to the window. My hands shook so badly I could barely grip the curtain. I eased it back, just enough to see. At first, my brain refused to process it. I tried to make it a person, a bear, anything ordinary. It was neither. A figure stood about 10 feet from the window, roughly 8 feet tall, covered in dark brown hair that looked coarse and thick. Its shoulders were impossibly broad, making the head seem almost small by comparison. Its arms hung low down to where knees should be ending in massive hands with fingers that looked too long. It didn't move. It just stood there in the yard, facing the house, watching. The moonlight was bright enough for details I didn't want to see. The uneven hair, matted in places and tangled in others. The barrel chest, and the face. The face was the worst, flat, almost human, but wrong. A wide, flat nose, deep-set eyes under a heavy brow. The mouth slightly open, showing what looked like yellowed teeth. It was staring straight at the window at me. I must have made a sound, a gasp, a whimper, because its head tilted, as if it had recognized me. My phone was on the nightstand. I grabbed it, nearly dropping it, and fumbled the camera open. I lifted the phone to the slit in the curtain and snapped a photo. The flash fired. For a split second, the creature was lit in stark white. Every detail horribly clear: the texture of the hair, the reflection in those deep eyes, the rise and fall of that huge chest with each slow breath. It turned away, not fast, not panicked, just calmly pivoted and walked toward the woods. It moved on two legs with a gait almost like a person's, but not quite. Each step looked light despite its size. I watched it disappear into the trees. Then I stood there for what felt like an hour, phone clenched in my hand, staring at the empty backyard. When I finally looked at the photo, my blood ran cold. It was crystal clear, better than anything I'd expect from a phone camera in the middle of the night. You could see individual muscles under the hair, the strands along its arms, the way its weight settled onto its feet. Not blurry, not ambiguous. Proof that I hadn't slept the rest of the night. I sat on the bed with every light on, just staring at the image. Each time I looked again, fear and doubt washed over me. That thing had been right behind my house. That thing was real. Around 6 a.m., I called my daughter. She picked up on the fourth ring, voice still sleepy. I tried to explain what I'd seen. I told her it was a creature huge and covered in hair standing right outside my window. I saw it. I took a photo. There was a long silence. She asked if I was okay, if I'd slept. She said I'd probably seen a bear, and my eyes played tricks on me in the dark. Bears can stand on their hind legs, she reminded me. Maybe so. I told her it wasn't a bear. It walked on two legs like a person. It had a face. It was watching my house. Another pause, longer this time. She asked if I wanted to come to Canada for a while. A change of scenery might help, she said. Living alone out there, anyone's imagination can run wild. Something cracked inside me. My daughter thought I was making it up, lonely, confused, seeing things that weren't there. I didn't send her the photo. I couldn't bear the thought of her brushing it off, explaining it away, treating me like I was losing my mind. We ended the call awkwardly. She made me promise to call if I needed anything. I agreed. We both knew I wouldn't. After that clear first sighting, I told myself maybe it was a one-off. Maybe it had just passed through and I'd never see it again. I was wrong. 2 nights later, around midnight, it came back. First I heard footsteps on the porch, heavy, steady on the boards. Then the stench bled through the walls, that awful rotting smell. I stayed in the bedroom, door locked, the dresser braced against it. The creature circled the house. I could track it by the footfalls and the porch groaning as it moved. It stopped at each window, and I pictured it peering in, looking for me. When it reached the bedroom window, I held my breath. I heard that snuffling again, one long inhale right at the screen. Then it moved on. This became routine. Every 2 or 3 nights it returned, always between midnight and 4 a.m. Always the same pattern. Circling the house, checking windows, sometimes raking the siding with what had to be its claws. The scratching was the worst, long drags across the boards like nails on a chalkboard, only deeper, angrier. I started sleeping with the lights on. I know it sounds childish, but I couldn't handle the dark anymore. At least with lights, I could see. I could pretend that if something broke in, I'd have a chance to spot it. Every night before bed, I shoved the dresser against the bedroom door. It's heavy, and I'm not young, but fear gave me strength. I pushed until it wedged tight, then piled more against it: nightstand, a chair, anything I could manage. One evening, my son called. We started with the usual, his job, the weather in Canada. Then, I told him I wasn't sleeping well, noises outside at night. "I think there's an animal around," I said. "What kind of animal?" he asked. I hesitated. If I said bear, he'd tell me to call wildlife control. If I said what I really thought, he'd think I was crazy. I picked something in the middle. A big one, I said, very big. It walks on two legs and looks in my windows. The silence on his end went on too long. He said it was probably a bear. They do that sometimes, he said. Stand on their hind legs. Looks strange in the dark. Maybe the isolation was wearing on me. Living alone out there, half a mile from anyone. Maybe I should think about moving somewhere with more people. I told him I wasn't leaving my home. It's where I lived with his father, where I raised them both. I know every inch of these woods, every animal that lives here. What I'd seen wasn't a bear. He offered to pay for me to visit them in Canada, a long visit, a few months to settle my nerves. I told him I was fine and ended the call. I still didn't send either of them the photo. What good would it do? They'd already decided I was a lonely old woman seeing shapes in the dark. I knew I needed more proof. The photo through the window was sharp, but it was just one image, one moment. If I could get video, show it moving, show it prowling around night after night, maybe then someone would believe me. I'd seen ads for doorbell cameras that record on motion. I ordered one online and paid for rush shipping. When it arrived 3 days later, I spent the afternoon reading the manual and trying to install it. I'm not tech savvy. My husband handled anything electronic, and after he died, I stuck to the basics. But I was determined to make this camera work. It took 4 hours, 2 YouTube videos, and a brief, near-teary breakdown. But I finally mounted it by the front door and synced it to my phone. That night, I went to bed feeling ready. If the creature came back, I'd have video clear, undeniable proof. I didn't have to wait long. Around 1 a.m., my phone buzzed, motion detected at the front door. My heart leapt into my throat. I grabbed the phone and opened the app. The live view showed my porch washed in the camera's infrared empty. But I heard something, a faint scraping, like something dragging along the side of the house. Then footsteps heavy, careful coming from the back, louder, closer. My bedroom window was cracked the tiniest bit for air, and through that gap I heard it approaching the front door. The steps stopped. Silence. Then the porch boards creaked. I crept to the bedroom door and pressed my ear against it. I could hear it out there, right outside the front door, heavier creaks, a weight shifting like something huge was testing its footing. Then the scratching started again, this time on my front door. Long, dragging scrapes, wood splintering under whatever made those gouges. My phone chimed. The recording had saved. Something lingered near my house for close to 10 minutes. I could track it by the sounds moving around the porch, occasionally raking its claws across the door or siding. The stench was so strong I could smell it even with the bedroom door shut. Finally, the footsteps receded. I heard it circle the house and head back toward the woods. When I was sure it was gone, I checked my phone. The camera had caught everything. The footage showed a massive figure in frame. The face looked humanish, but not human, more like a Neanderthal. The night vision made things look odd, but it was still clear. It was the same creature I'd seen before. About 8 feet tall, thick fur, arms hanging down near the knees. But this angle was different straight on, and I could see its face. A flat nose, deep-set eyes with a strange glow, a heavy brow, and the mouth. The mouth was the worst part. As it stepped closer, it opened up, revealing huge yellowed teeth. It didn't growl or charge. It just breathed mouth open like it was tasting the air. It stopped right at my door. The camera angle put me almost eye to eye with it, as if it were staring straight into the lens. For several seconds, it didn't move. It simply stood there. This giant thing stood on my porch, staring at the entryway. I realized with a jolt I was looking straight at my front door from the outside. Then it moved to a side window. It lifted a massive hand and pressed it to the living room glass. The pane bowed inward under the pressure. I could see each thick, long finger flatten against it. It was testing, seeing if the window would give. I went cold watching it. This wasn't just an animal passing through my yard. It was intelligent. It understood doors and windows were barriers that could be breached. After a few seconds, it lowered its hand and stepped off the porch. The camera caught it walking away upright, with that odd, almost human gait, then it slipped out of frame. I watched that clip 15 times that night. Every time I felt the same blend of terror and vindication. This was proof, unmistakable. Whatever this thing was, I had it on video. I stopped going outside except in full daylight. The garden I'd tended for years fell to ruined tomatoes rotting on the vines, weeds swallowing the beds. I couldn't stand in that open yard with the woods, only 30 yards away. I ordered deliveries. Drivers left packages on the porch, rang the bell, and left. I waited for the sound of their car pulling away, then cracked the door, grabbed the parcel, and darted back inside. The whole routine took maybe 30 seconds, but my heart pounded the entire time. The neighbors started to worry. I knew because one afternoon an older man who lives about half a mile away knocked on my door. We've traded pleasantries for years, but aren't close. He called through the door to say he'd noticed I wasn't out much. Was everything okay? I answered through the still locked door, said I was fine, just staying in more. Bad weather, not feeling great. Even to my own ears, the excuses sounded thin. He said to call if I needed anything and left his number in the mailbox. I never called. The isolation was suffocating, but it felt necessary. Inside, doors locked, windows sealed, I felt relatively safe. Outside was where it lived. Outside was dangerous. I'd stopped talking to most people. My weekly calls with the kids grew shorter and more strained. They asked how I was. I said fine. They asked what I'd been up to. I made things up. Gardening, walks, TV, all lies. The truth was, I spent most days in the living room staring at the trees, waiting for night so I could barricade myself in the bedroom and wait for it to return. Because it always did. On a late night in early October, it came back. I almost expected it. 3 nights had passed since its last visit, and the cycle was holding. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion at the front door. I sat up in bed, lights still on, grabbed the phone, and opened the app. The live feed showed the creature on my porch, again closer this time. So close, its body nearly filled the frame. It looked up at the camera, not a glance, but a deliberate stare, as if it knew what the device was, as if it understood it was being watched. My hands shook. The creature cocked its head slightly, studying the camera. Then it did something that froze my blood. It opened its mouth and made a sound, not the whoop or breathy huff I'd heard before. This was different, a low, rumbling growl I could hear even through the shut window and bedroom door. It was communicating something, a warning, a threat I didn't understand. Then it turned its attention to my front door. It reached out a massive hand and gripped the knob. I watched in horror as the knob twisted. The door was locked, of course, but seeing it turn sent a spike of panic through me. The creature let go and leaned closer to the camera. Too close. Its face filled the frame. I could make out everything. The texture of the hair, those deep, reflective eyes under infrared, the wide, flat nose, and the mouth open, showing stained teeth. I did something foolish, something I shouldn't have done. I opened my phone's regular camera and snapped a photo of the live video on my screen. The result was an extremely sharp image of the creature's face, staring straight into the lens, teeth bared, hair rimlet by infrared. It was the clearest shot I'd ever captured, even clearer than the first photo. A close-up of something that shouldn't exist, detailed enough to count the teeth. A few seconds later, the creature backed away and left the porch. I heard it circling the house as usual, checking windows, raking the siding. But this time felt different. Meaner. Intentional. It knew I was recording and didn't care. The next morning I made up my mind. I now had 2 photos, 2 pieces of evidence no one could deny. If I showed the kids, they'd have to believe me. They'd have to see I wasn't making it up. I sent both photos in a group text, no explanation, no preface. My daughter called within 5 minutes. She asked what the pictures were, where I got them, why I'd sent them. I told her the truth. This is what I'd seen. This creature comes to my house almost every night. That's what I've been trying to tell you, I said. Silence on the line. Then she asked if I'd edited the photos, used an app or some computer program to make them. The question hit me like a slap. My own daughter was asking if I faked the evidence of what has been haunting me night after night. I told her I don't know how to edit photos. I barely use my phone for anything but calls and texts. These are real. They are. She said they looked fake, too sharp, too perfect. With all the blurry, grainy, real creature photos out there, mine looked almost professional, too good to be true. My son joined the call. He'd seen the pictures too. He was more blunt. He said they looked computer-generated. He'd seen AI images that looked exactly like this. crisp, detailed, but off somehow, not quite real. I tried to defend myself, explain the doorbell camera, the live feed, how I'd watched it circle my house night after night. My voice kept rising, edging into panic. I could hear myself losing control and couldn't stop. They talked over me, using that calm, soothing tone people use with children or the elderly. They said they were worried about me. He said living alone was clearly taking a toll. I should see a doctor, make sure everything was okay. I hung up and sat in the kitchen, staring at the 2 photos on my phone. They were real. I knew they were real, but what good is knowing when no one believes you? Late October brought the worst night of my life. It started, like always. Around 1 a.m., I heard footsteps coming up the gravel, then the stench bleeding through every crack in the house. I was in bed, the bedroom door braced with the dresser. But this time was different. Instead of circling the house, it went straight to the back door. I heard it try the knob, rattling it in the frame. When it wouldn't open, it started to shove. The whole house shook with each hit. I heard the frame groan, wood splintering. It was trying to break in. I scrambled out of bed, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911 with shaking hands. The operator answered, and I stammered, "Something is breaking into my home. Something huge and strong. It's about to get in. Please send help, please." The dispatcher tried to calm me, asked if I'd been drinking, if I'd taken any meds. The questions felt like accusations. "No," I screamed. "I'm not drunk. I'm not on drugs. Something is smashing my door." Another crash, louder splintering. I heard the back door give way. The dispatcher kept talking, but I couldn't hear anymore. I dropped the phone and shoved the bed harder against the bedroom door, then the dresser, then the nightstand, then the chair from the corner. I threw everything I could move into the barricade. Through the bedroom window, I heard it inside the house now, kitchenware clattering, glass breaking, thuds and cracks as it tore through the living room. It was destroying everything. Then it reached my bedroom door. The pounding started immediately so hard the entire frame shuddered. My barricade rattled with every blow. The dresser scraped across the floor. The bed frame groaned under the strain. I ducked into the closet and pulled the door shut, curling up in the dark among clothes and shoes, phone clenched in my hand. I could still hear it all, the pounding, the crashes, the frame splintering. Then I heard its breathing on the other side of the bedroom door. Heavy, ragged breaths. It was right there, inches away, separated from me by a wooden door and a pile of furniture. The attack dragged on for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 30 or 40 minutes. Then, suddenly, it stopped. Silence. No more pounding, no more breath, just stillness. I stayed in that closet until Dawn didn't move, barely breathed. When the first light showed under the closet door, I finally crawled out. My bedroom door was still standing barely. The frame was cracked. The door itself was raked with deep gouges, claw marks. My furniture had been shoved several feet from the door. I carefully opened the bedroom door and looked out. My house was wrecked. The kitchen table flipped, chairs snapped, cabinet doors hanging by their hinges. The living room looked like a tornado had hit, furniture overturned, pictures ripped from the walls, glass everywhere, and the walls themselves. They were gouged deep with long claw marks, trenches carved into the drywall. My back door was torn off its hinges, the frame was shattered, but the thing was gone. The police finally arrived around 6 a.m. They said they'd been handling other calls, that it was a busy night. They walked through the ruins with flashlights, asking what happened. I tried to explain. Something had broken in something big. It tried to force its way into my bedroom but couldn't get through the door. One officer asked if anything was stolen. I looked around. Nothing. Everything was destroyed, but nothing taken. The other officer studied the claw marks and asked if I had a large dog or any animal that could have done this. "No," I said. "No pets. Whatever did, this came from outside." They found footprints in the soft dirt by the ruined back door, huge prints. Both officers knelt to study them. They glanced at each other but said nothing. They took photos and made notes for the report. One suggested I install security cameras, lock up better, maybe stay somewhere else until they figured out what was going on. I told them I had a camera and showed the doorbell footage on my phone. They watched the creature on my porch face to the lens, mouth open, teeth bared. Their expressions didn't change. They thanked me for the video and said they'd include it in the report. That was it. No shock, no skepticism, no acknowledgement of what they'd clearly seen, just professional detachment. They left around 7. They said they'd patrol the area more often, keep an eye out, but I could read it on their faces. They thought I was crazy. Another lonely old woman losing it in the woods. That afternoon, my daughter called. She'd gotten a 911 alert. I must be listed as one of her emergency contacts. She knew about my call, knew the police had come. She and my son flew out immediately. 2 days later, they arrived, knocking on my door and calling my name. I'd stayed in the bedroom since the break-in, only slipping out to use the bathroom. No eating, no sleeping, just sitting there with the dresser still braced against the door, waiting. I finally let them in. My daughter cried out when she saw me. I must have looked terrible, unwashed, unchanged, hair wild. I probably looked exactly like they imagined. A crazy old woman. They walked the house and saw the damage. My son kept asking, "What happened? Who did this?" I told them the same thing I told the police. Something broke in, something that had been stalking me for months. My daughter found my old laptop, the cheap one I bought years ago, and barely know how to use, and held it up, asking if I'd used it to edit the photos. I said no. I've used it maybe 10 times total, mostly for email and recipes. My son pulled the doorbell videos off my phone and watched both clips of the creature on my porch. He looked at my daughter and shook his head. He said the videos looked manipulated. There are programs that can make footage this convincing, he said. He called them deepfakes. I tried to show them the footprints outside the huge impressions in the mud. My son said they could be anything. Maybe someone in oversized boots. Maybe I made them myself, pressing a mold into the ground. I asked why on earth I'd do that. He didn't answer. My daughter got on the phone while my son kept talking to me. He used words like evaluation, assessment, and temporary care. I realized what was happening. They were going to have me committed. I begged them not to. I'm not crazy. Everything I showed them was real. The photos, the videos, the wrecked house real. Why wouldn't they believe me? My daughter said it was because the evidence was too perfect. Real encounters don't produce crystal clear photographs and high-resolution video. Real evidence is blurry, vague, inconclusive. What I showed them was too good, too professional. To them, it proved I'd fabricated it. The next morning, 2 specialists arrived. They asked more than an hour of questions about my sleep, my stress, whether I'd seen or heard things. I tried to stay calm and rational, but every time I mentioned the creature, I saw their faces shift, like they were quietly ticking boxes on a form. By the end, the decision was made. I needed professional care. Just for a short time, they said, until I felt better. My kids had already packed a bag for me. I watched them through the bedroom doorway, crying as they folded clothes and gathered my toiletries. They thought they were helping, doing the right thing. That night, my last night at home, I lay in bed thinking about the creature, wondering if it was out in the trees watching, wondering if it knew I was leaving. I've been here 3 months now. The room is small, clean, plain. White walls, a narrow bed, a window over a courtyard. No woods, no trees, just trimmed grass and concrete paths. The staff are kind, but they treat me like I'm delicate, breakable. They call me dear and honey, and talk in soft, sing-song voices, as if I were a child who needs soothing. In group therapy, we sit in a circle and share. Others talk about their depression, anxiety, and trauma. When it's my turn, I usually tell the story of the creature its visits, the night it broke into my house. But the therapist redirects me, asking me to focus on my feelings instead of the events, suggesting maybe the creature represents something else. Fear of aging, fear of isolation, fear of death. I stopped sharing the photos after the first week. They're filed away somewhere, labeled as delusions, evidence that I'm detached from reality. The staff have looked at them. Some are intrigued and say they look incredibly real. Others are dismissive and say they're obviously fake. No one believes they're real. My children visit once a month. The conversations are careful and sad. They talk about selling the house. They say I can live with one of them in Canada when I'm feeling better. A safe place, they say, a place with people around. I nod but don't agree. That house is mine. The house I shared with my husband. The house where I raised them. I'm not ready to give it up even if I never get to go back. They ask how I feel. If I'm sleeping better, thinking more clearly, I tell them yes to everything what they want to hear. That I understand now I was stressed and confused. That living alone made me see things that weren't there. I can see the relief on their faces when I say it. They believe the meds and therapy are working, that their mother is finally getting better. But it's all a lie. I know what I saw. I know what happened. The photos are real. The videos are real. Every gouge in my walls, every shattered piece of furniture, every night of terror real. But I've stopped fighting. I don't try to convince anyone anymore. What's the point when no one believes you? When your own children think you've lost your mind, what can you do but give up? At night, I sit by the window and look across the courtyard to the distant line of trees beyond the wall. It's far, maybe a quarter mile, but sometimes I imagine I can see movement in those trees, a massive shape watching from the dark. The other patients have started calling me the Bigfoot lady. Some say it with pity, some with mockery. I don't care anymore. Let them think what they want. My house is empty now. Last time my daughter visited, she said the neighbors reported strange things. Huge footprints in the yard, noises at night, something moving around the property but no formal action taken. No investigation yet? Maybe the creature is still there. Maybe it's looking for me. Or maybe it moved on, found someone else to haunt. I don't know. I've had a lot of time here to think about what happened, about why no one believes me, about how 2 photos that should have been proof became proof of my madness instead. Last week, the staff psychiatrist told me something interesting. She said that in cases of paranoia, patients often generate increasingly detailed evidence to support a false belief. The more they're challenged, the more complex the evidence becomes. Your photos, she said, are a perfect example, too clear, too perfect, too convenient. That's when I understood why no one believes me. The better my evidence, the more it proves I'm insane. If I'd taken blurry, vague images, people might at least wonder if something unusual happened. But sharp photos of a creature that shouldn't exist are, by definition, fake products of a disordered mind. It's a trap with no escape. Bad evidence means you saw nothing. Good evidence means you faked it. No evidence will ever be enough. My daughter brought me a laptop during a visit, thinking I might want to pass the time browsing or watching videos. I thanked her and took it, but I haven't turned it on. What would be the point? If I tried to share my story online, people would say the same things my family did. Fake, edited, too good to be true. Still, those photos remain on my phone. Sometimes I look at them alone at night, studying every detail, the texture of the hair, the shape of the face, the way the eyes catch light. I memorize them, afraid that one day I'll start believing what everyone else believes, that none of it was real. But I can't forget. I remember the smell, the heavy footsteps, the sick terror when the back door gave way. Those aren't things you imagine. They're things you live through. I haven't just lost my freedom here. I've lost credibility, dignity, and my relationship with my children. They love me, I know they do, but they will never see me the same way again. I will always be the mother who fell apart, who saw a monster in the woods, who isolated herself for safety. I've lost my home, or will soon. The house I lived in for 40 years, where I watched my children grow up, where my husband and I grew old. I was happy there, before September and everything changed. I've lost my independence too. Even if I'm discharged, even if they declare me stable, I'll never live alone again. My children made that clear. I'll move to Canada to live with one of them, monitored for relapse. I'll be a burden, a responsibility, a worry. Worst of all, I've lost the ability to trust anything. For the rest of my life, no matter what I say, people will wonder if it's true or if I'm slipping again. Every word suspect, every claim doubted. I'll be the woman who saw Bigfoot, the crazy one. That's the price of those 2 photos. That's all of it. My son mentioned something during his last visit. The neighbor, the older man who knocked on my door that afternoon, had reached out. He'd heard I was here and wanted to know if I was all right. He told my son something strange. Back in the 72nds, when he first moved to the area, there were stories, local legends about a large creature living in the woods. Most people brushed them off, but a few swore they'd seen it. Some found footprints in their yards, smelled something foul outside at night. Then the story stopped for decades. Folks decided it was just bears, misidentifications, rural superstition until this year. Onto May, The neighbor says he saw big prints in his yard a few weeks ago, heard something moving in the trees at night, found his trash dumped in a way that felt deliberate beyond what a normal animal would do. But he didn't report it. He told no one but my son, because he'd seen what happened to me, how reporting, documenting, trying to prove it led to this. Better to stay quiet. Better to pretend you saw nothing. Better to live in fear than be labeled insane. My son told me as if it should comfort me, as if it proved I wasn't alone. But all it proved was that the truth doesn't matter. Evidence doesn't matter. Reality doesn't matter. What matters is preserving the illusion that such things can't exist. Sometimes I wonder about the creature, what it is, where it came from, why it chose my house. Was I unlucky? Was my home in its territory and I just in the way? Or was there something else? I think about the night it broke and the way it destroyed the house without taking anything, the way it attacked the bedroom door and then stopped. Was it trying to kill me, take me, or only terrify me? And I think about how it looked into the doorbell camera, stared straight into the lens, mouth open, teeth bared. It felt like communication, a message. But what message? Stay away. I'm in charge here. Or something else entirely? These are questions I'll never answer, questions I can't even ask without people thinking I'm slipping again. I wonder if anyone will ever believe. If someday someone will capture indisputable proof of the impossible and the world will accept it, or if we're simply wired to reject anything that challenges what we think we know, no matter the evidence. My photos might have been that proof should have been. 2 sharp images of a creature science says doesn't exist, but instead of persuading anyone, they convinced everyone I was mad. Maybe that's the real impossibility, not the creature's existence, but our willingness to believe. Today, my daughter visited. She sat across from me in the common room and smiled, said I looked better, stronger, more like myself, asked if I'd thought about the future. She told me they'd found a buyer for my house. The sale will close in about a month. After that, I can move in with them in Canada. They've set up a room for me. You'll love it, she said. Neighbors close by, lots to do, people to talk to. I nodded, smiled, said it sounded nice. She showed me photos of the room, yellow walls, floral curtains, a soft chair by the window. It looks like a guest room, someplace to visit, not to live. Then she showed me photos of my house. She'd been there last week to start packing. Pictures of the living room, the kitchen, my bedroom. Everything looked normal. The damage from that night had been repaired, new doors, patched walls, replacement furniture, as if nothing had happened. But in one photo, through the kitchen window, I could see the backyard, the distant tree line, dark and thick. And for just a second, I thought I saw something. A shape among the trees, big, dark, watching. I blinked and looked again, but she'd already swiped to the next picture, a close-up of my garden, overgrown. She talked about hiring someone to clear it before the sale. I wasn't really listening. Was the shape real, or was I seeing things again? Does it even matter anymore? If you're reading this, if my story somehow makes its way out despite everything, I want you to know one thing. I am not crazy. I know that's what crazy people say, but I'm not. I'm a 70-year-old widow. My life was quiet and uneventful until the impossible happened. I documented it as carefully as I could. I tried to tell people. I tried to get help. And the system decided I was insane, not because of what I claimed to see. Plenty of people claim strange sightings, but because my evidence was too good, because I had sharp photos instead of blurry ones, because I had video instead of vague descriptions, because I tried too hard to prove I was telling the truth. That's what no one tells you about encountering the impossible. The better your evidence, the less credible you become. It's a trap. You need proof to be believed, but having proof means you faked it. So others stay silent. They witness, experience, and never report. They don't write it down. They live with their knowledge and their fear because they've seen what happens to those who speak up. Now I understand. I wish I'd understood sooner. I've been here longer than I ever wanted. They tell me I'm improving. In a few months, maybe 6, I might be well enough to leave, to start a new life in Canada with my children and their families. Be careful about relapse, they'll say. I'll comply. I'll take the meds, go to therapy, say the right things. If they ask me to delete the photos, I'll do it and hope they never ask. I'll agree that I was stressed, grieving, isolated, that my mind invented something to fill the void. I'll do all of it because I have no choice. Fighting it only keeps me here longer. Truth doesn't free you when no one believes it. But I'll know. I'll always know what really happened. I'll know that something impossible moved through those rural American woods. I'll know I had the clearest images anyone has ever taken. And I'll know that even with that evidence, even after doing everything right and telling the truth, no one believed me. That is the real horror of my story. Not the creature itself, terrifying as it was. Not the wreckage, the destruction, or the fear. The horror is being right, having proof, and watching everyone you love decide you're crazy. If you see something inexplicable, something that shouldn't exist, think very carefully before you try to prove it. Ask yourself whether proof is worth the cost. Because the world doesn't want evidence of the impossible. The world wants comfort, certainty, tidy explanations. The world wants to believe that if anything extraordinary existed, we'd already know. Science would have found it. Clear, unambiguous proof would have surfaced long ago. So when clear, unambiguous proof comes from someone like me, it's easier to reject the person than accept the evidence. Easier to call them insane than admit they might be telling the truth. My 2 photos should have changed everything, should have proved something extraordinary. Instead, they proved I belonged in a hospital. That's what I want you to know. That's the real story behind the sharpest images of something impossible. And here they sit, on a phone, in a psychiatric ward, in the hands of a woman no one believes. The creature in those images is still out there wandering the woods at night, watching houses from the tree line existing despite our insistence that it cannot. But I'm still here. And the photos that should have mattered don't matter at all. That's the truth, the only truth that still counts. For more stories worth hearing, look here.